1990, Terry Schiavo suffered severe cardiac arrest in her Florida home. She had developed a severe case of hypokalemia, or potassium shortage, which destroyed most of her brain and left her in a permanent state of vegetation. In the following years, her husband Michael and her parents did everything they could to improve her condition. But after it was evident that Terry would remain in this hopeless state, Michael went to court and asking to disconnect the tube that provided nutrition to her motionless body. For the next 7 years, Schiavo's parents, who were staunch Roman Catholics, fought him bitterly in a battle that engaged the entire nation, including Governor Bush, President Bush, and the entire U.S. Congress, in a debate over how to decide treatment for terminal patients who are unable to communicate. After 15 agonizing years full of bitter court cases and passionate protests from both sides, a state judge ordered caretakers to disconnect the feeding tube, ending Schiavo's 15-year struggle. Schiavo's story brought to light the issue of intervention in end-of-life situations and whether or not living, even at its worst, is better than dying peacefully. And so today, euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide are becoming major issues as technology is prolonging lives that are often in miserable and vegetative states. So what exactly is euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide? There's a small but major difference. Euthanasia is when the physician directly intervenes to end the patient's life. There are two types of euthanasia. Passive euthanasia is foregoing medical treatment knowing that nature's course is death. This is more often referred to as pulling the plug, as in the case of Terry Schiavo. Then there is active euthanasia, which is illegal almost everywhere, and that is hastening death through illegal drugs. And then there is physician-assisted suicide, where the physician provides the patient with the ability to end their own life, and the patient does the rest. Generally, this means hooking up a machine that releases legal drugs when the patient presses a button. Physician-assisted suicide would hardly be an issue if it wasn't for Jack Kevorkian. Kevorkian was one of the earliest and by far most famous advocates for physician-assisted suicide. After a career in pathology, Kevorkian developed the Mercytron, a machine that allowed the patient to press a button that released a lethal dose of poisonous potassium along with painkillers. From 1990 to 1998, Kevorkian stated that he had assisted in over 130 deaths of patients. In March of 1999, Kevorkian was charged with second-degree murder and served 8 years of his 10 to 25-year sentence. Kevorkian passed away just a year later, and although he left behind a very controversial legacy, he undoubtedly paved the way for physician-assisted suicide to be legalized in this country. During Kevorkian's campaign to legalize physician-assisted suicide, a few states were starting to take notice. The Oregon Death with Dignity Act allows mentally competent, terminally ill residents to request medications based on their own death. Oregon voters approved of this law in 1994 and confirmed their support in 1997. The act then went into effect in 1998. Since the act has been implemented, 596 patients have been put to death by physician-assisted suicide. Since Oregon adopted the act in 1998, 2 other states have made similar amendments. Washington State voted to allow their own Death with Dignity Act in 2008, and Montana legalized assisted suicide in 2009. So why is this issue more important than it's been in the past? Well, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the nation's 90 and over population has nearly tripled over the past 3 decades, reaching nearly 2 million in 2010. Over the next 4 decades, this population is projected to more than quadruple. This means more elderly patients to take care of, and inevitably more circumstances like that of Schiavo. According to CBS News, in 2009, Medicare paid $50 billion for doctor and hospital bills during the last 2 months of patients' lives. That's more than the budget of the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Education. And it has been estimated that 20 to 30% of these medical expenditures have no meaningful impact, going to patients whose lives would have ended soon, regardless of the treatment. The debate has turned to whether the burden on the family, the patient, and the economy is worth life at any condition. Regardless of your opinion, euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide are becoming major issues As, as the nation becomes more elderly and technology allows our lives to go longer.